Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. In news that should come as a shock to nobody, Deutsche Bank has been smacked with a $150 million penalty for their ties to Jeffrey Epstein. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, then you know that I have been railing about the financial crimes in this case. And I believe that the financial crimes in this case will be the crimes that bring the enablers down. All of their finances are tied up. Everybody Jeffrey Epstein was sending money to or receiving money from, or anybody in the organization, well, that is all dirty money. And if you receive that money, well, you are now part of this conspiracy. And that is how these financial crimes are investigated, and that's how they're prosecuted. So at the end of the day, all of these enablers that we're always talking about, that were hangers-on, people that were receiving money from Epstein, going to his parties, had business dealings with him, not the ones that were engaging in the actual trafficking or the facilitating of the trafficking, but the enablers. The other tier I'm always talking about. Those are the people that seen this news today, that Deutsche Bank got hit with a $150 million slap, and those are the people that are panicking. Because remember, when you follow the money, you usually end up at a politician. And that's what's happening here. It looks like, I've been talking about forensic accountants as well, and it certainly seems that there is something going on behind the scenes where they are starting to trace down these transactions, where they came from and where they went. It is all a huge part of this, and I know for a fact right now that all of these enablers that were involved with Epstein, people like Jess Staley, Leon Black, Glenn Dubin, all of these people that were involved with him financially are really not having a good day today, because this is a big deal. This is a predicate to Rico, right? And I don't mean Rico as far as the child trafficking portion of this. I'm talking about financial Rico crimes. These are the crimes that they end up taking down all the mafioso on, right? Oh, they'll charge them with murder and conspiracy to commit murder, but they usually end up nailing them on financial crimes. And that's what's going to happen to these enablers if this investigation is carried out the correct way. Now, we all know that I'm skeptical of the federal government, and I am skeptical of the way they've conducted themselves from the very beginning. I will remain skeptical. But what I am seeing here, like I said a few weeks ago before Maxwell was arrested, remember, everybody else was talking about how Maxwell's not going to get arrested, we're not going to get justice, she's in Paris, she has extradition protection, blah, 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 blah. Negative. We are 4 months away from an election. There is immense pressure on the SDNY to do the right thing in this case. And I'll tell you this much right now, everybody should be scared, because we have no idea what the future holds in this country as far as elections go, right? It could be a whole different ball game in 4 months. But as of right now, I'm seeing signs that this investigation is actually coming to life, that this investigation is starting to follow the money. And when that occurs, and the money is truly followed, you always end up in the office of some scumbag politician who is running some sort of scumbag scheme, which inevitably is no good for anybody but them and their few friends. Today's article is from CNBC.com, and the headline is, Deutsche Bank hit with a $150 million penalty for relationship to sex offender, pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein. This article was authored by Dan Mangan and Jim Forkin. New York State financial regulators said Tuesday that they have slapped Deutsche Bank with a $150 million penalty for significant compliance failures in the bank's dealings with the accused child sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, a now-dead investor, as well as with two client banks. Folks, this is This is such bad news for them, but such good news for the investigation and for the survivors' legal teams. If you don't think that the survivors' legal teams are digging into this and looking for every single angle to make sure that every single bit of punishment is dropped on the heads of these people, you are wrong. Now, I don't have any inside information about that, right? Like, I don't talk to the lawyers or anything, but you would think by the way that they've conducted themselves throughout this whole entire ordeal, how they've had all of their ducks in a row and how everything has been very targeted, that they're certainly keeping a very good eye on this. And this kind of ruling most certainly will trickle into the actual criminal portion of this case. The New York State Department of Financial Services said that Deutsche Bank, which agreed to the payment under a consent order, failed to properly monitor account activity conducted on behalf of the registered sex offender despite ample public information about Mr. Epstein's earlier criminal conduct. And now remember, previously I talked a lot about regulations, right? Title 31. I talked about SARS. I talked about a little bit about Title 18 and how all of these things are tools that are used by investigators for financial crimes. And it's obvious to anyone paying attention that Deutsche Bank was not hitting this guy with suspicious activity reports nowhere near at the pace they should have been. Now, there might have been one or two that were filed by regulators that might not have been in the know, like as a mistake or something, but we know that Deutsche Bank and JPMorgan weren't keeping things up to date in the FinCEN database. We know that. And we know that they're right here. They're being told that they were facilitating this. They were involved in this. And I don't think 150 million, while it's a good slap in the mouth, I don't think it's good enough. Furthermore, I think that 150 million should not go to the state of New York. That 150 million should be put into the pool, the estate pool. And the survivors should get that as well. The big settlement comes days after Epstein's alleged procurer, co-conspirator, all-around child molester, sick broad, Gillian Maxwell, was arrested on federal charges that accuse her of helping him get access to and groom underage girls so he could sexually abuse them. And this stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? All of this stuff's coming out now because the assault is on, and with Gillian Maxwell, the head of the snake, being decapitated, you know that the push is coming. So we'll see this kind of thing start to happen more often and probably at a quick clip. The news is fast and heavy right now with this case, and there is a lot of disinformation out there as well, so please be on the lookout for that kind of stuff. Such nonsense as Dr. Fauci's involved in this case. I mean, come on, really? So there is a lot of disinformation right now, but when you're seeing this real tangent news come out, this news that's applicable to what is going on in this case, you just have to smile if you've been following things. I know I have been very, very hard on the federal government, super hard on them, because it's filled with all sorts of snakes and disgusting people, right? And when it comes to the Department of Justice, forget about it. They're a laughingstock. But every now and then, shit'll go right. All I hope here is that we continue to see progress the way we're seeing lately. And if this is any indication, this settlement, Ghislaine being arrested, Brian Vickers going dark with his social media, then folks, there is a lot more coming. The question is, how much and when? The state said it was the first enforcement action by a regulator against financial institutions for dealing with Epstein. Now remember, Barclays and Jess Staley, who I have been all over, are also getting a good hard look right now, but by financial regulators in London. And with all of this stuff coming forward now, all of the girls that were abused in London coming forward, it's going to put immense pressure on the regulators in England to also slap Barclays. And we got to make sure that JPMorgan doesn't escape this, because Epstein was with JPMorgan for years and they facilitated so many of his financial transactions. The consent order covers Deutsche Bank's relationship with Epstein and correspondent banking relationships with Danske Bank Estonia and FBME Bank. Deutsche Bank maintained a relationship with Epstein as well as with related individuals and entities from August 2013 until December of 2018. And remember, 2013 is when JPMorgan jettisoned him. I know it's a coincidence that Jess Staley had happened to leave at that time, right? That JPMorgan decided after Jess Staley, Epstein's top facilitator, left, that, we're gonna jettison him. We're not gonna work with him anymore. As if that's gonna save everything. As if that's going to make you look better. We're on to you. We know the deal. And we're not going to let you get off. These disgusting ass financial institutions all got off after the financial meltdown. Nobody went to jail. None of these banksters were ever prosecuted. And they just went on with their nonsense. Well, now your chickens are coming home to roost as well. And all of these bankers that had financial ties to Jeffrey Epstein and who were dumping money into his accounts and helping him facilitate these transactions, every one of them should be smashed with Rico indictments. Deutsche Bank maintained a relationship with Epstein as well as with related individuals and entities from August 2013 until December of 2018, when the bank ended its dealings with him after the Miami Herald published a series of stories about a federal non-prosecution deal that Epstein obtained in 2008 in Florida. And that's such bullshit. Okay? Look, the Miami Herald did good work. There is no doubt, right? They did good work bringing this story to the forefront. But for these institutions to say they had no idea what was going on until the Miami Herald broke this story, it is so ridiculous that they would think that any one of us would believe that. When Jeffrey Epstein was getting arrested the first time, it was a pretty big deal. And a much bigger deal to these financial institutions that know that they had ties to him. They escaped the guillotine the first time around. This time, they are not going to be able to wiggle their way out because their lapdogs in the legacy media no longer control this narrative. Over time, Deutsche Bank handled more than 40 accounts related to Epstein and related people and entities. The Financial Services Department said that because of the bank's oversight failure with Epstein, the bank processed hundreds of transactions totaling millions of dollars that, at the very least, should have prompted additional scrutiny in light of Mr. Epstein's history. So basically what they're saying is, nobody filed any suspicious activity reports, the FinCEN database was completely neglected, and Jeffrey Epstein was given free rein to launder and funnel money through Deutsche Bank. Those transactions include payments to people who were publicly alleged to have Epstein's co-conspirators in sexually abusing young women and settlements totaling more than $7 million and payments to law firms of more than $6 million for what appear to have been the legal expense of Mr. Epstein and his co-conspirators, the department said. Well, isn't that nice? The transactions, the payments to people who were publicly alleged to have been part of the conspiracy, that is Rico, okay? What more do they need? These are all Rico predicates. All of these people that received money from Jeffrey Epstein, I don't know how much more clear I need to be smashed with Rico indictments yesterday. All of this money is connected, and it was all derived from ill-gotten gains. Nobody knows where Epstein was making his money. He wasn't some mensch in the stock market, right? He's not the Oracle of Omaha. So where did the money come from? We all know where it came from. We all know it all came from their criminal organization. And then that money was filtered through these banks, laundered, washed up, and deposited in one of these front offshore businesses or one of these banks that Epstein opened up with the help of the regulators in places like the Virgin Islands. Rico. Not Uncle Rico, by the way, from Napoleon Dynamite. I am talking the Rico. Can we get some, please? Other payments were made to Russian models, payments for women's school tuition, hotel and rent expenses, and consistent with public allegations of prior wrongdoing, payments directly to numerous women with Eastern European surnames, according to the department. Now, I hope that all of these Eastern European women that were abused by him, have some sort of way to reach out and get involved in the compensation fund. Because these are the no-named women I'm always talking about. Whatever happened to these girls? Where did they go? How did their lives end up? And now that there's a little light at the end of the tunnel for the survivors, and there's a couple of bucks coming their way, I think that these unnamed girls should get a little peace, right? Because what they went through, I can't even begin to try and understand. Imagine coming from one of these war-torn Eastern European countries and you come to America and you think everything's going to be good and you have this great opportunity to become a model and work with some of these agencies and you have an agent now and you're going to be able to send money back to your family. And then you get to America, the shining city on the hill, and you're put into a little apartment where you sleep on the floor, and if you don't go out and turn tricks for these guys, you don't get any money. And all of those dreams and all of those aspirations crushed under the heel of this sick, disgusting pervert, Jeffrey Epstein, and his pal Gillian Maxwell. And all of these European girls, the forgotten girls as I like to call them, should come forward and get themselves involved in this settlement process because they deserve it as well. All noted were Epstein's periodic suspicious cash withdrawals, in total more than $800,000 over approximately 4 years, the department said. Now, all of those transactions should be marked down on a CTR, a Title 31 CTR. Anything over $10,000.01 must be reported. No ifs, ands, or buts. I don't care how rich you are. I don't care how powerful you are. When you reach the threshold, that amount must be reported. And obviously, all of these transactions went under the table. All of these transactions occurred in the months and years after August 2013, when in preparation for Epstein's accounts being shifted to Deutsche Bank, a junior relationship coordinator on the Epstein account prepared a memorandum for a relationship manager at the bank to be sent to the bank's then co-head of the Wealth Management Americas Group and the chief's operating officer of the Wealth Management Americas Unit, the consent order notes. So all of those people who okayed this, they're all in big trouble. Every one of these people need to be investigated. Do they have any personal ties to Epstein? Was Epstein funneling money to them on the side? Were they catching any loot on the come up if Epstein was steering business their direction? These are all questions that must be asked. That memo contained information about Epstein's prior state sex crime case in Florida, noting he was charged with soliciting an underage prostitute in 2007 and that he served 13 months of his 18-month sentence, and that Epstein was accused of paying young women for massages in his Florida home, the consent order said. It also highlights that Mr. Epstein was involved in 17 out-of-court civil settlements related to his conduct in the 2007 conviction, the consent order said of the memo. In an email to the two bank executives who included the memorandum as an attachment, the relationship manager noted how lucrative the relationship could be, stating estimated flows of $100 to $300 million over time, possibly more, with revenue of $2 to $4 million annually over time, the consent order said. Again, it's all about money for these people, these sick bastards, these banking institutions, these banksters. They don't care about people. They don't care about human beings. They certainly don't care about survivors. So if anybody's shocked that these banksters would be involved with this sort of shit, well, I'm sorry that the red pill had to be so rough for you. Because we are surrounded by evil, evil people, folks, everywhere we turn. In the same email, the bank's relationship manager proposed that all Epstein-related accounts be for entities affiliated with Mr. Epstein, not personal accounts, the consent order noted. The order noted that banks are required to have anti-money laundering controls in place and that they also are required to monitor their customers to prevent them from facilitating criminal activity. They did none of that. The oversight when it comes to these personal banking divisions is lax. Basically non-existent, because what's going on is everybody's a bazillion trillionaire and they're all wheeling and dealing. And these managers who are in control of these accounts, like Jess Staley, all they care about is stacking another couple of million in their bankroll. They don't care about being morally correct. They don't care about being compassionate to survivors or to the people that Epstein abused. No way. It's all about those dollars. State Financial Services Superintendent Linda Lacewell said in a prepared statement that in each of the cases that are being resolved today, Deutsche Bank failed to adequately monitor the activity of customers that the bank itself deemed to be high risk. In the case of Jeffrey Epstein in particular, despite knowing Mr. Epstein's terrible criminal history, the bank's inexcusably failed to detect or prevent millions of dollars of suspicious transactions, Lacewell said. This $150 million is not enough. They got to be slapped with much more stringent penalties. The State Financial Services Department said it concluded that Deutsche Bank failed to monitor the activities of their bank clients, Danske Estonia and FBME, with respect to their correspondent and dollar clearing business. Dollar clearing business, huh? Sounds like code word for washing money. The department noted that Danske Estonia is at the center of one of the world's largest money laundering scandals and had control failures that led to large amounts of money being transferred on behalf of Russian oligarchs. Deutsche Bank is so wrapped up with so much dirty money from so many corners of the world that it's not even funny. We could do a whole entire day of podcasts on Deutsche Bank and their financial crimes. Over the course of the years-long relationship between Deutsche Bank and Danske Estonia, Deutsche Bank was repeatedly put on notice of these failings and of the fact that few improvements were undertaken by Danske Estonia, the department said. Despite the fact that Deutsche Bank assigned Danske Estonia its highest possible risk rating, Deutsche Bank failed to take appropriate action to prevent Danske Estonia from transferring billions of dollars of suspicious transactions through Deutsche Bank accounts in New York. Wow. This is so significant. This is such an absolute shit show. The regulator also said that Deutsche Bank's relationship with FBME represented a similar failure to act on red flags from a high-risk client that required annual enhanced anti-money laundering checks. There you go, folks, right there for you to see yourself. They're calling it what it is here. It's buried a little bit in the article, but it's a money laundering scheme. It is most certainly that. Despite these checks, there was little evidence that FBME improved the quality of its controls over several years, the Financial Services Department said. Deutsche Bank CEO Christian Sewing, in an internal communication to all bank staff about the settlement, said, "Today serves as a reminder of how vigilant we must remain." Oh yeah, sure, now let's remain vigilant. Nobody's buying it. Deutsche Bank is on the hook, and you're not going to wiggle off this time. It not only marks the anniversary of our Compete to Win strategy, but also our settlement just announced with the New York Department of Financial Services, resolving investigations into our controls and processes in the fight against financial crime, Sewing said. Oh boy, if you think that this is over, Mr. Sewing, you are not paying attention. He noted that the settlements cover 3 issues: Danske Bank, the Federal Bank of the Middle East, and our former business relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Onboarding the latter as a client in 2013 was a critical mistake and should never have happened, the CEO said. Hindsight's 20/20, my man. That's not good enough for me. I certainly will never do any business with your institution, nor will I do business with Barclays. In fact, I like to use local federal credit unions at this point, because every one of these banks is absolutely and utterly corrupt. A Deutsche Bank spokesman said, "We acknowledge our error of onboarding Epstein in 2013 and the weaknesses in our processes, and have learnt from our mistakes and shortcomings." The spokesman said that immediately after Epstein's arrest on child sex trafficking charges in July 2019, the bank contacted law enforcement and offered our full assistance with their investigation. Why did you even take him on as a client in 2013? You knew what he was, you knew what he did, and you took him on anyway. Nice try backtracking here, but we're not going to let it slide. Questions must be asked, and questions must be answered. We have been fully transparent and have addressed these matters with our regulator, adjusted our risk tolerance, and systematically tackled the issues, the spokesman said. Look, Your internal investigations are garbage, okay? Point blank, period. Nobody believes you're going to stringently investigate yourself. Stop it. Epstein, 66, died last August in a federal jail in Manhattan from what authorities ruled was a suicide by hanging after being denied bail in his criminal case, where he was charged with child trafficking and conspiracy to commit child sex trafficking. The multimillionaire, pedophile investor was a former friend of Presidents Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, as well as Britain's Prince Andrew. And that's just the beginning of it with the friends, right? Jeffrey Epstein had quite the collection of friends. All the pictures on the walls, all the people he hung out with, the people on his plane, the people at his island, the people in New Mexico, etc., etc. He also was a registered sex offender, having pleaded guilty to Florida state charges in 2008, one of which was related to paying for sexual services from an underage girl. Epstein served 13 months in jail in that case, a bit much of the time was free on work release. Last week, Maxwell was arrested on federal charges while holed up at a $1 million getaway in New Hampshire. Prosecutors in New York say that in the mid-90s, Maxwell helped Epstein get access to and groom underage girls so that they could be sexually abused by him, and sometimes with her participation. And we know she was very much involved in that. We know she abused a lot of girls. We know what she did to Annie. And she's not going to be able to slither off of this one. She's not going to be able to get out of this one. She's not going to be able to talk her way out of this. Because guess what? Ghislaine Maxwell is never going to see the light of day again. I know other people feel differently, etc., but personally, I think that Ghislaine Maxwell was used as an asset by the intelligence agencies. She was burned after the whole entire situation with Epstein the second time around, and now she has been abandoned and discarded to her fate. That's what I believe. And I don't think she doesn't have the pull anymore to get out. So I believe that she will spend the rest of her life behind bars. Maxwell, 58, was transported by authorities to New York City. Her first court appearance in Manhattan federal court is set for July 14th. She is currently being held in a federal jail in Brooklyn pending a decision on whether she should be granted bail. Prosecutors want her held without bail, calling her an extreme flight risk. And for sure, an extreme flight risk. She has connections all over the world. She should not be let out of jail. She should not get bail. She should be forced to sit in there and rot. Because she is a danger to the community. She is a danger as a flight risk. And she has spent way too many days living the high life. It is now time that she begins to understand that that part of her life is over, and the new part of her life, the one that, well, includes a jumpsuit and a jail cell and some solitary confinement, that part of her life has just begun. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. Inside of the description box, you will find a link to the article, and if you would like to help out the podcast, you can find a link to the GoFundMe in there as well. All right, everybody, we'll be back later on with some more.